So,
what do you mean by a freestanding facility?
So freestanding facility is a non-hospital based facility.
Okay.
So in the hyperbaric world, there are hospital-based facilities, and they can only treat, or they will only treat, the insurance-based indications. And right now there's only 15 of those indications that insurance will pay for.
Oh my goodness, just 15?
Just 15. In a freestanding facility can treat anything that a doctor will write a prescription for. So hyperbarics hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a prescribed treatment. So you have to have a prescription to do the type of hyperbarics that we do. There are other hyperbarics where it's called a mild hyperbarics, where it uses low pressure and doesn't use 100% medical grade oxygen. So with a 100% medical grade oxygen, the FDA considers that as a drug. And so we're under the medical world.
The following information is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to diagnose, treat, prevent, cure, or prescribe for any medical or psychological conditions. Seek out the opinion of a qualified healthcare professional if you need medical attention. The guests of this show provide their own opinions and may not represent the values or beliefs of Living Waters Wellness Center or Whole Body Detox Show. And welcome everyone to today's Whole Body Detox Show. I'm David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center. Living Waters Wellness Center was formed after we discovered how to heal my body from multiple symptoms, including allergies, asthma, chronic fatigue, back pain, psoriasis, acne, hives, yeast infections, and finally cancer, and I did it all naturally. After 20 years of trying numerous different treatments, medical treatments, cleanses, iridology, muscle therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, homeopathy, naturopathy, those experiences led us to discover that recipe that led to become known as the 4 Natural Laws of Healing. Combining multiple natural healing modalities to fully detox and cleanse the body and allowing the body to take the perfect nutrition to fully restore the body back to its innate health. This became known as a 10-day healing retreat. We've helped thousands of people just like you get their health restored so they can live their life to the fullest. And if you want to learn how you can get your body back to living your best life, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on that link, 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video. Or call the office at 208-378-9911.
Good morning, everyone. David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center, where miracles begin by healing from within. Today, rare treat, I'm actually over in Hailey, Idaho, visiting with Phil Rainey of Sun Valley Hyperbarics. And I thought it'd be fun to bring you an episode on hyperbaric chambers, something that I used back in 2021. If you go back and listen to the show called The Day I Nearly Died, I lost 15 pounds or 30 pounds in 15 days. Wasn't a diet program. Was very, very sick. Didn't come into the office for 2 months, which is unheard of for me. But one of the things I used was hyperbaric chamber. Recently, I got to meet Phil, where I introduced a family member who got a severe concussion to come see him, and I was really fascinated with his layout of his facility, which we'll show you some pictures later, because he's got the state-of-the-art facility here in Hailey, and you've been doing this for quite some time. So Phil, tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to start Sun Valley Hyperbarics.
Well, my background is I dove for the military for 11 years in the early 80s, and that's where I learned to run chambers. And
you say you dove, what's that mean?
Well, I was a reconnaissance diver in the Army, and then I became a deep sea diver in the Army, which is pretty rare.
Oh, wow.
But I went through 2 Navy dive schools to do that, and so that's where I got my background in running hyperbaric chambers. So, yeah, diving for the military was exciting. I did that for 11 years, and so I understood.
So you're talking about scuba diving or submarine or both?
Well, as a reconnaissance diver, it was scuba diving, and then as a deep sea diver, it was with a helmet, surface supply diving.
Okay.
And then, so that's where I got the understanding of how hyperbarics works. We did a dive mission in San Diego, and we were filling our tanks on the McKee, which was a sub-tender, and they had a person in a chamber there that was being treated for a wound, and saw how amazing that was, that they were able to save this young sailor's leg from a motorcycle accident. And so that stuck with me. And then years later, my wife at the time ended up with a bone infection, osteomyelitis, from a surgery that she had. And when I asked the docs, would hyperbarics be something that would be helpful, every doc that I talked to said, no, it wasn't an indication for it. And then I started doing research and found out that actually it's one of the few indications that insurance will pay for is osteomyelitis. So I decided in that research, I realized that there are very few hyperbaric facilities in Idaho, and at the time, there weren't any freestanding facilities. So,
what do you mean by a freestanding facility?
So freestanding facility is a non-hospital based facility. Okay. So in the hyperbaric world, there are hospital-based facilities, and they can only treat, or they will only treat, the insurance-based indications. And right now, there's only 15 of those indications that insurance will pay for.
Oh my goodness, just 15? Just
15. In a freestanding facility can treat anything that a doctor will write a prescription for. So hyperbarics hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a prescribed treatment. So you have to have a prescription to do the type of hyperbarics that we do. There are other hyperbarics where it's called a mild hyperbarics, where it uses low pressure and doesn't use 100% medical grade oxygen. So with a 100% medical grade oxygen, the FDA considers that as a drug. And so we're under the medical world.
Okay, so we're talking about the types of
hyperbarics, right, hospital-based versus freestanding facilities.
Right. So as I've seen in the past, there are the soft-sided ones.
Right, and that's mild hyperbarics. The thing is they can go up to 1.3 atmospheres.
Okay.
And they don't use 100% medical grade oxygen. Usually they'll use like an oxygen concentrator.
Okay.
And they don't get the high concentrations of oxygen that you need.
So you said it goes to 1.3 atmospheres.
What
does that mean?
So it's atmospheres in the hyperbaric world. 1 atmospheres would be considered 33 feet of seawater, or 14 psi.
Okay.
Now, when we deal with hyperbarics, 1 atmosphere would be the atmosphere we're at.
Okay.
And then you add on top of that whatever atmosphere, whatever pressure you're going to add. So 1.3 would be our atmosphere plus 0.3%. So it's not very much, and that's why it doesn't do the same things that hard-sided or high pressure oxygen does.
So the next type would be hard-sided?
Right.
And
that's what we use.
Okay.
And so that's what you'll see in the hospitals, that's what you see in the diving industry to get the higher pressures.
And why the diving industry? Why are they so attuned to using that?
Well, it started a long time ago when they found out that when you're under pressure for long periods of time, that gases will dissolve into your bloodstream. So it's physics. And so when you have a gas in a liquid, the liquid being your blood or plasma, you dissolve that gas into the liquid, just like a carbonated drink, right? So a soda pop would have the syrup, and then you add pressurized carbon dioxide, which gives it that fizz. But that gas dissolves into the liquid, and then when you pop the top, you depressurize it, and those bubbles are coming out of a solution form into a gas form.
Okay.
So that's what that was used for in the diving industry, is that you would get that buildup of gas, and usually nitrogen would build up into your bloodstream and then into your surrounding tissues. And if you came up too fast or didn't do decompression stops, that when you hit the surface, those gas bubbles were so large that they couldn't get past the capillary level and then get out of your bloodstream. And so you would end up with gases in your tissue, and which could cause a lot of pain and possibly death if you had too much.
Right.
Right? And so that depends on how deep you go and the duration.
Okay.
So that's where that was started. Now, prior to that, they knew that adding pressure would make you feel better. So there were practitioners back then that would use canisters and bellows hoses and bellows to pressurize people in these containers, and which were like big wine casks, and they found that they recovered faster or felt better from different disease processes. Same principle when doctors told people to go live at sea level, go to the coast, live at sea level, you'll do better. Well, you've got more pressure on you, and you're able to get more oxygen into your tissue. Because right now, the hemoglobin can carry 4 O2 molecules. Can't carry any more than that. But if you add pressure, you can dissolve O2 or whatever gas you're into the bloodstream at a rate much higher than what the hemoglobin can carry. So that's why at altitude, when you have less pressure, you don't do so well, and you can have altitude sickness. And so that's kind of the physics part of that, right? Hyperbarics is a combination of physics, chemistry, and biology rolled into one, and they act upon each other. So it's a lot of science that we're just now understanding, right? And protocols have changed. I started in 2012. It's now 2025, and our understanding about hyperbaric medicine and how it works has changed in that short period of time.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, we used to think that it was the high concentrations of oxygen that caused the gene responses, right? Stem cell production, apoptotic effect of inflammatory cells, and there's hundreds of gene responses that happen. We used to think that it was that high concentrations of O2. Now there were studies out from Israel that have discovered that it's actually when you come off of that high concentrations of O2 that triggers the gene responses. So at 50 feet of seawater at 2.5 atmospheres absolute, when you take an air break or come out of the chamber, it goes from 1,500% down to 500%.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, to think that it's been only about 13 years since a lot of this has changed.
Yeah.
I know they've gotten very popular. I mean, it used to be, I've seen them in the past many years ago, where I'd talk to people and said, man, it sounds like I didn't know anything about hyperbaric chamber, really. Didn't know anything about hyperbaric chambers, but it just made a lot of sense to me. But the hospitals wouldn't provide them. I thought that was just wild.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's all money-based. If insurance is not going to pay for it, then the hospitals aren't interested in doing it. Right. And because this treatment...
Even though they're not-profit.
Well, yeah.
That's a whole other deep dive.
That's another dive down the rabbit hole. But that treatment that we do in the hospital is about $3,000 per treatment. So, and a course of treatments, say for a diabetic patient, would be like 40 treatments. So at $3,000 a pop, you're going to
$120,000.
Right, you're going to create a large bill, which chances are you can't afford to pay for out of pocket. So they don't want that to happen, and so they just avoid that by not treating anything that insurance won't.
And 40 treatments here would be?
So 40 treatments at around $200 a treatment.
About 8,000.
Yeah, about 8,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so...
That's about 5%.
Right, yeah. So that's the problem. Not that off-label things don't work. If they didn't work, doctors wouldn't be writing prescriptions for them.
Right.
But they understand the properties, right? One treatment will more than double your stem cell production.
One treatment?
One treatment.
Double your stem cell production?
Yep.
That's incredible.
So that study, there was a study in 2005 that the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine did that found that one treatment at 2 atmospheres would double your stem cell production. In 2013, they replicated that study at 2.5 atmospheres and found that you got a third more at 2.5 than you did at 2. So that changed a lot of people's protocols in that, we want stem cells. We want to get as many stem cells there as we can. And then at 2.4, it was knocking down inflammation. So 2.4, 2.5, not very far off. So a lot of people do either or at 2.4, 2.5 to get stem cell production and to knock down inflammation. So that's where, our protocols changed and, in that short period of time.
So is the most you do now is 2.5, or can you go deeper?
I mean, we can go deeper. Carbon monoxide patients, we treat at 3 atmospheres.
Oh, wow.
And that's an indication that insurance pays for. We don't get a whole lot of that, but we do get some. The hospital will bring patients down to us, carbon monoxide.
Now, let's back up on the equipment. So the one I use, I've done the soft-sided years ago. Then when I got sick, I did a hard-sided, but I had a mask on.
Right.
Now, in your systems, you don't wear a mask.
We have the option to do either way.
Okay.
So we can pressurize the chamber with air,
Okay.
and then you use a mask.
Okay.
Use a lot less O2.
Okay.
So it's cheaper to do it that way.
Okay.
It's more efficient for us to do that, and then it saves the patient from that cost. Or we can pressurize the chamber with 100% O2, and it's basically the same treatment. Transdermally, through your skin, you're going to take O2 on about 3% of the O2 transdermally, right?
Okay.
But if you have, say, a wound or a burn, something that you're trying to get O2 to externally, then we'll do that treatment. Or you can go in the multiplex chamber, and we can put up to 5 patients in there, and in there you're going to wear a mask because the chamber's so large. It's 15 feet by 6 feet, and
yeah, we got a picture that we'll put up on the.
Right. So in that chamber, we never pressurize that with O2, and you wear a mask or a hood. So,
Okay.
So the hood, same thing, but it seals around your neck, and then you've got a clear
Now, when I did
vinyl hood.
the mask I'd wear, they would finally say, okay, now put on your mask. And then they'd have what they call a break,
Right. Air brake.
air break.
And so the air brake does 2 things. One, the chance of oxygen toxicity goes down and keeps and prevents oxidative stress at the same time. But the most important thing, I believe, is when the Israelis figured out that going off of O2, taking that air brake, your O2 sats go from 1,500% above normal down to 500% above normal. 500% above normal is huge. But when there's 1,000% differential drop from 1,500% to 500%, that 1,000% differential drop tricks your cells into thinking that they're not getting enough O2.
Oh.
So it triggers that trauma effect. And so it just like cold water therapy, hot therapy, intermittent fasting triggers those responses of trauma, and so that activates these genes to repair that, right? So, ramping up stem cells, it has that apoptotic effect of inflammatory cells, and that's why it worked so well during COVID, right? Those pro-inflammatory cytokines, it would just cause cause them to burst, and so you're destroying that cell, but also stop the migration of inflammatory cells to the site. So that's important. Most anti-inflammatories will do one or the other, but this actually slows down the inflammatory response, and then triggers apoptosis of those inflammatory cells, and then actually triggers the cleanup of the inflammatory.
And for those who don't know, apoptosis is?
That's the self-destruct mechanism in cells. So it actually has a anti-apoptotic effect of healthy cells.
Oh, wow.
So it'll protect cells. It's also is a neuroprotectant. So it has all of these really good gene responses that happen during the treatment. And so when you understand those properties, then you can connect the dots on what disease processes it might be helpful for. Inflammation is huge on basically every disease process out there.
Sure. Yeah.
Right, so getting the inflammation down, and we've even seen that, say, with patients with bulged discs, is that we can get that disc to shrink back into place.
You can get the disc to shrink back into place.
Right, what they're finding is that with a lot of bulged discs is that what's causing that, because your whole, and it's usually L4, L5, S1, right?
Yes.
So your whole upper torso stacks on top of those discs. And with, capillary refill is when, like, if you touch your finger and you move it away and you see that blood goes away and then it returns. Well, it doesn't take much pressure to push blood out of those capillaries, right? Your disc and your vertebral body are vascular, but they're not hugely vascular. There's a lot of small capillaries in there. And so when you push that blood out, and the blood's crucial to keep bacteria down, right? So those white blood cells go in there and fight bacteria between the disc and the vertebrae. And when bacteria builds up between the disc and the vertebral body, it will trigger inflammation. That's why you can go to bed, be fine, and then wake up with incredible pain in your back and go to the doc and them tell you that you've got a bulged disc. You haven't had any trauma that's caused that disc to bulge, but now it's pushing out and pushing against the nerve, and that's where you're getting the pain from. But and most of that bacteria, by the way, is anaerobic bacteria. Doesn't tolerate oxygen very well at all. Oxygen kills it. So you bombard it with massive amounts of oxygen, 1,500% more oxygen, and that oxygen dissolves into all of your tissue, even bone. And so you kill that bacteria, and then you take care of the inflammation in there. That apoptotic effect, the self-destruct mechanism in those inflammatory cells gets triggered, and so it knocks the inflammation down, and the disc shrinks back into place. And it doesn't take a whole lot of treatments to do that. Most of those back patients that we treat, they're doing anywhere from 5 to 10 treatments, and now they don't have to have surgery to get that disc.
That's incredible. How more people don't know about this? Insurance doesn't pay for it.
Insurance doesn't pay for it, and you can't patent it, right?
Yes.
It's just pressure and oxygen.
Very simple.
And so nobody's getting rich in the hyperbaric world.
So let me just rephrase what I think I heard you say. So what you're saying is you've got the bacteria around that disc. That's created the inflammation. And what you have is a reaction when you're bringing all this oxygen in, is that's cleaning that up, if you will.
Right. So, yeah. So
the bad stuff's going to die off.
So it's killing the bacteria and then knocking the inflammation down, right? So it does both of those. Also, if you do enough treatments, it will grow new blood vessels into those areas.
Get out of here.
So
That's incredible.
Well, that's how it works in wound care, right? So it's famous in wound care. I mean, that's one of the biggest users of hyperbaric medicine is in diabetic wounds, right? So and how it works is that you grow new blood vessels back into that tissue.
Right.
It lays down collagen and creates a base to get that wound to heal up. It also kills anaerobic bacteria. So necrotizing fasciitis and gangrene are two of the indications that insurance will pay for. And it works very well to take care of those. But they won't use it until it gets bad enough, till you have a Wagner grade 3 infection, meaning you can see the bone and tendon
in
the wound. Then insurance will pay for it if you're a diabetic. So
if you're diabetic, if you're almost dead.
Right. So it's a very small box that it has to fit in before insurance will pay for that.
It's incredible.
So that's why you don't, and even docs, wound care docs that you would think that would be educated on hyperbaric medicine aren't, because it's a lot of hospitals, like our hospital up here in Sun Valley, we don't have a hyperbaric chamber. There isn't one in Twin Falls. There is in Boise, Pocatello, and Idaho Falls, but you don't see it a lot, and so it's just not on the radar for most docs.
You know, it's interesting, just recently in Boise.
Yeah, so with wound care, I mean, and that's where, we see some, actually, I'd say probably half of our patients are some type of wound care.
Oh, really?
But not many of them are insurance-based. So we will get some insurance-based patients here, but patients don't want to wait until they're ready to lose a limb.
Right. Yeah, why would you?
And actually, the two biggest users of hyperbaric medicine are horse racing and professional sports. And that's because that's where the money is, right? So you want to get that athlete back out on the field performing.
Because they fell off a horse and had a concussion?
No, it's actually for the horse.
Oh, for the horse?
For the horse, right? So
Oh, wow.
if the horse comes up lame, or it's just recovering from training, right? So
Special chambers for horses.
yep, they're large chambers, and they'll take the horse in there and usually put a muzzle on the horse. That's how they get the O2 in there. And with professional athletes, they get injured, and you want them to recover, right? Your money's in that athlete. So if you're a professional athlete or a coach and you want your athlete to get out on the field as quickly as possible, then you do everything that you can to get them out there. And hyperbarics, because it knocks down inflammation, it ramps up stem cell production, you can get those wounds. And it's a wound, whether it's a diabetic wound or say an MCL or an ACL repair, you're trying to get that to heal as quickly as possible. So when you see those players, those pro players, and they're back on the field 2 weeks after they have had, say, an ACL repair, and that's one of the things that they're doing.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I wonder why those people can recover so fast.
Right.
I had an ACL tear years ago and meniscus tear, and it's not a quick turnaround, but that's what they're doing.
No, they're doing usually a combination of that, stem cells, other stem cell products, and things like that. But yeah, you create that environment. So, and actually hyperbarics, that's what it's all about, right? Creating the environment, because your body does amazing things, right? But you have to have the environment for it to do that. And that's how we're able to do, say, brain injuries, whether it's a concussive injury, a traumatic brain injury from blast, or even from neurotoxins, right? The brain doesn't have the environment in it that the rest of your body has, and it lives in an ischemic environment. When you breathe in,
describe ischemic. What do you mean by that?
So lack of oxygen,
Okay.
right? So when you breathe in,
Right.
20% of the O2 that you breathe in goes to your brain. Your brain makes up like 3% of your body mass, consumes 20% of the O2. With that, that's only enough oxygen to supply 5 to 10% of brain function at any given time. So all of that O2 is used up in brain function. There's nothing in there left over for wound care, right? So the brain doesn't heal like the rest of your body.
Right.
But if you create that environment, if you get the brain stem cells and oxygen, it can heal much like the rest of your body. We can grow new blood vessels back into those damaged areas. We can repair neurons. So we can take somebody that has gone through, a lot of these vets that we treat, and many of them are special operations guys. We can, and they've gone through the whole gamut that the military's thrown at them to try to fix their brain injury, and nothing is working. They still have those symptoms, and we can take that patient and we'll do 40 treatments on those guys, and it's life-changing for them. Most of the symptoms go away. Often they're either completely off their meds when they leave, or have reduced them to the point where they're not having the side effects from the meds that they normally take. So it's huge, and it's exciting to see that when you've got whether a Delta Force guy or a SEAL team guy that is struggling, and the suicide rate is so high with those guys, and they've tried everything, and then something as simple as pressure and oxygen can change that portion of their life. And I mean, it's huge for them, but their family. In fact, many of these folks that come to us, it's their spouse that has done the research and has driven them to us. and giving them, a lot of them, it's an ultimatum. You go do this, or we're done, because the symptoms are just so severe. And the PTSD, we're finding the PTSD symptoms mirror traumatic brain injury symptoms.
Right.
And so when you heal the wound, the symptoms go away.
How long can you wait before you can recover and heal the brain from a traumatic brain injury?
Well, we've treated Vietnam vets, right?
Oh, wow.
That were exposed to blast, but also Agent Orange. So, like I say, whether it's a blast injury or a neurotoxin, it's still a brain injury,
Okay.
right? So there's that damage, and so I'm sure there's some kind of timeline on that. And the closer to the insult time, the better. If you can treat it in the acute stage, like say concussive injuries, if we can treat it then you don't have then you're not doing damage control, because most of the time it's the inflammation in the brain that does the damage. With a blast injury, you're going to have a lesion in the brain, and but any of those injuries are going to cause massive inflammation. That's what happens with say cerebral palsy, right? So cerebral palsy is an ischemic injury to the brain at birth. Well, that goes undiagnosed for so many years or months, and the damage happens, but in the initial insult, but so much of that damage is due to the inflammation that's caused by that initial insult. And so that's where and same thing with, say, football players.
Can you take babies into the chambers?
You can. The tough part about pressurizing is that you can have barotrauma to the ears or the sinuses, and so you have to be very careful, do it very slowly, but in a controlled environment, yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's creating that environment in the brain,
Right.
and then you can heal those wounds.
So you start talking about football players. Do the teams now have hyperbaric chambers on their facilities?
Not the team. I don't know if it's the team so much. I think some teams do, but I think the players themselves find out about it. It's an interesting situation with football, like the movie Concussion touches on it, where it's a situation that happens. The problem is that if you admit that it's happening, now you have to work at preventing it from happening, but also you have to pay for the damage that it's doing, right? So for all of those players that have, say, CTE, chronic traumatic encephalitis, or any other brain injury from those concussive injuries, now are they responsible for that? Right? What's the cost of that?
Exactly.
And so if you just don't admit that it's happening, then...
And they try very hard. I just met a guy, played 1 year, I think. He got severely concussed, played for the San Francisco 49ers back in their heyday. He's about my age. He just got a payoff from the insurance company after 30-some plus years of...
Right.
So they don't like to...
No, I mean, it could potentially end football as we know it. And the military is the same way.
So, we can't have that. How do we drink our beer and eat our chips, Phil?
Right. So we've been trying to get the VA to cover hyperbaric treatments for veterans for years. Rob Beckman is kind of championing that for years and years. And it's hard to understand why, because they'll throw every kind of therapy, even like laugh therapy, at PTSD.
Wow.
And there's really no double-blind study for a lot of these therapies, but they won't do it for hyperbarics. It's very frustrating.
Which brings it, you started a foundation.
Yes, yeah, I started Hyperbaric Health and Wellness Foundation.
For veterans.
Yes,
What's it called?
Hyperbaric Health and Wellness Foundation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's been operating since how long?
I don't know exactly. It would have been shortly after we opened in 2012, so it would have been 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And the main reason I started it is that, one, knowing that this does work for traumatic brain injury and PTSD, that we've had amazing results with it, and that insurance is not paying for it.
Right.
The VA is not paying for it. And myself, being a veteran and knowing what the suicide rate is for these guys, and knowing that there's something that we can do about it, I had to do something.
Right.
So we started raising money to be able to treat not just veterans, but anybody that has a condition that we feel this would be helpful for, but because insurance will not pay for it, it's such a hardship on them that they're not able to do the treatment. So we do as much as we can with what we've got. And so
Now, those people who come from out of state, I know years ago I met someone, they were coming from Alaska, a vet.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to get some colonics done at Living Waters in Boise, and they're coming to you. So they come and stay here for like 40 days?
Right. So so we would put them up, and they're not 40 days. We would do 2 treatments a day for those patients. We'd do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And so they're here for 21 days, and we put them up, feed them, and do their course of treatments. And it's amazing to see what happens in 3 weeks.
Wow.
With those folks. Just
Do you have any videos of people that talk about that, their experience?
I do. Yeah. I'll try to get those to you. What's really amazing to see is some of the, say, SPECT scan imaging.
Yeah. You showed me some last time. I like those.
Yeah, so I'll show you those,
well.
the SPECT scan imaging, the right eye test that we do. That's a quick, easy test that we look for a brain injury.
So explain that. Explain
So
that
the
right eye
so
test.
the right eye is that's a trademark name for them, but what it does is that your eyes are an extension of your brain. So if you have a significant brain injury, it will affect your vision. Many times you have no idea that it's affecting your vision. This picks it up. You look at a screen, you follow a dot, vertical, horizontal, in a circle, fixation, so where your eyes are focusing. And so we'll do that. We'll get a baseline on those patients, and then we'll do it at the end of their treatment. And you can see a huge difference in a lot of these folks. And it's a quick, easy way for us to get some data.
Now, you don't do the SPECT scans here.
We don't. No, the Amen Clinic does SPECT scans. There are other facilities that Sariscan does scans. But what a SPECT scan does is that it looks at blood flow. So if you have areas of the brain that aren't getting perfused, they're not getting that blood flow there, then they won't light up, or they show as empty areas.
Wow.
So if you look at a SPECT scan of someone that has CTE, their brain will look like Swiss cheese. So there'll be all of these holes throughout the brain that the blood supply has been cut off.
Wow.
And so when you revasculate those areas, now they light up, and then it'll show that they're filled in and smoothed over.
That's absolutely amazing. The body is,
Yeah.
as I witness every day, I get to watch the miracles, but I mean, it's just amazing how we can do that with the brain.
Right. Yeah. So.
That's always been kind of like, nothing you can do about the brain.
Right.
That's
right.
what
That's
common.
yeah.
If I went on the street today, can you heal the brain?
Right.
I would say.
Yeah. Most people would say there's no neuroplasticity. Right. You can't fix a brain injury, but you can once you create that environment.
Have you treated any Alzheimer's or dementia patients?
We have. Unfortunately, with Alzheimer's and dementia, by the time the patient's symptomatic, there's so much damage done. So right now, if there's a lesion in the brain, there's a part of the brain, the tissue is dead. You can't reanimate that. But if you can catch it early enough.
We've been talking to Phil Rainey of Hyperbarics of Sun Valley. You can reach him at 208-928-7477. And Hyperbarics works even better if you get your colon clean, as you can imagine, because every organ in your body connects to the colon. You can learn more about that at livingwaterscleanse.com. Watch the video for Natural Laws of Healing at livingwaterscleanse.com. If you miss any parts of the show, catch it over the podcast, wholebodydetoxshow.com, or links on livingwaterscleanse.com as well. If you want to reach us direct, 208-378-9911. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid sized patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net, or call the office at 208-378-9911. Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, than by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Waters.
My name's Peg. I came to Living Waters about a year ago, so I run pretty hard when I'm working. But through this retreat, I think one of the biggest things that I've gained is that self-confidence. Thank you, Living Waters.
Hi, my name is Anna Lewis, and I came to do the 10-day cleanse because I hadn't been feeling really well, and so I could cleanse, get rid of parasites and toxins in my body, and those were great help. So thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link for Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video, and check out this hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab, or call the office at 208-378-9911. That's 208-378-9911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience and may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional and see if cleansing is right for you. You're joining our conversation with Phil Rainey of Hyperbarics of Sun Valley. You can catch him at 208-928-7477. And if you are ready to do your spring cleaning, reach out to us at livingwaterscleanse.com. While you're over there, watch the video, The 4 Natural Laws of Healing, or you can call us direct at 208-378-9911. The body works better if you get rid of the toxicity, decreasing the inflammation. Then you give it the perfect nutrients, and you have the ability to heal.
The tissue is dead. You can't reanimate that. But if you can catch it early enough.
And what would be early in your mind? Forgetting things, asking the same question over.
Yeah, that's you're already symptomatic, but it's not too late because one, this is a neuroprotectant. We don't know how durable it is for that. We can revasculate the brain. We can reduce scarring in the brain. We can repair neurons. But if you have an insult that's continually causing that damage, you have to get to the root cause of that and stop it there.
And what do you think the root cause is for a lot of dementia or Alzheimer's? Or have you...
There's a lot of speculation on that, whether it's parasites, whether it's, I think with some of the patients that we see with vascular issues, say like a patient with dementia, many that we see, they have vascular necrosis in the brain. So the blood vessels are breaking down in the brain, right? So you're going to have areas that have idling neurons in there, right? The neurons are still alive, and they get enough oxygen to stay alive, but not to fire and function, right? The mitochondria will take from the hemoglobin, it will take oxygen, it will take glucose and create ATP, right? The energy source for the cell. if the cell isn't getting one of those, I mean, it can get enough glucose, but not enough oxygen, it won't create the ATP. So the cell stops functioning, right? So and usually that's because the blood supplies.
You're literally turning off the engines in your brain.
The plumbing's broken down, right? So so the plumbing's not there. So everything that the plumbing is supplying starts to shut down. Yeah. And so memory is one of the hardest things that we've seen to fix, but cognitive skills, we also do an ANAM test, which was developed by the military, and it's kind of like the impact test. So it looks at cognitive skills, reaction time, memory, and things like that. It's a computerized test. It's somewhat subjective, but it helps give us a baseline as well. So we do those tests. The SPEC scan is great. Doesn't fix none of those tests fix anything, but it gives us a picture of what's going on in the brain, and then gives us a good baseline, so we can compare it and have some.
You've shown me some pictures that are pretty amazing.
Right. The one I think that to me that is most insightful is the Delta Force operator that we treated, and he was, not only a Delta Force operator, but he boxed for the Army.
Oh, no.
Was an MMA fighter.
Oh, jeez.
Golden Gloves fighter, and so he had classic CTE, chronic traumatic encephalitis, which just means chronic inflammation, and in the brain, and so that creates a lot of damage. His brain literally looks like Swiss cheese when you look at the SPEC scan, and he came to us after being, going through the whole gamut that the military puts them through, and he did red light therapy, he did all kinds of therapy. The guy was high functioning. So, in fact, he did a stand-up paddleboard from Texas to New York.
Holy smokes.
Around the Keys, right? So, very high functioning. You wouldn't know that there was anything wrong, but he'd tell me it feels like the record skipping, and also he started paddleboarding because for him it felt like the ground was always moving, and so his doc said, well, try getting on a boat or a stand-up paddleboard and see if that changes anything. And that was helpful for him to get on a stand-up paddleboard. It kind of righted itself. Right. And so because he has that type A personality, he took it to the extreme, and kind of like Forrest Gump, he just kept going. But yeah, and he also paddleboarded from Port Townsend, Washington to Alaska. Wow. On a stand-up paddleboard. So an amazing athlete, but when you look at that image of his brain, you're just going like, I don't know how you function at all. Yeah. And then afterwards, we flew him out to speak at a fundraiser, and he was talking to the folks, and he said, let me explain to you what this has done for me. And he said, as a Delta Force operator, I could multitask like nobody else. I was able to do that in high stress situations, and he said, and then I couldn't. And so he said, at the beginning, he said, I'll give you a little demonstration. And so he had a Rubik's Cube, and he's holding it over here, doing it with one hand, talking to everyone, and completed the Rubik's Cube without looking at it. Just like, I can't do it looking at it. Right. But this guy, yeah, he was just an amazing character. But when you see that and hear, anecdotally how they feel and how their significant other, their experience with them before and after, it's really frustrating because you want to just shake the necks of those the people that are holding this back from these guys, because they should never leave the military without going through a program like this. Right? Because we know the military has chambers all over the place, and they have the ability to get these guys. They can house them, they can feed them, and it's a relatively short period of time.
They've got them right there, and just by sitting.
Right? Or else we can pay them to be disabled the rest of their lives. The ones that survive, the ones that don't take their own lives or end up in a prison somewhere, it's just, it's very frustrating, and I still don't understand. But,
well, we're finding out there's a lot of things we
right.
didn't understand, but now it's becoming a little clearer. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, hyperbaric medicine, like I say, once you understand the properties that it has, you can look at different disease processes and go, should be helpful for this, should be helpful for that. I mean, the myriad of things that we treat on a daily basis are huge, from neurological things, like traumatic brain injury or stroke patients, or wound care things, injuries like back injuries, wounds, burns, carbon monoxide poisoning, cyanide poisoning is one of the indications that is covered. It's just, and then we have the folks that want to do it just for healthcare, right? Preventative. The new study out that talks about telomere lengthening. So a course of treatments, and it's a long course, it's 60 treatments that they did this study on, but they found that that it would lengthen telomeres 19 to 30% longer.
Holy smokes.
Right? And your telomeres are they're kind of the holy grail in anti-aging.
Well, as I understand it, the length of your telomeres, as it's shrinking over life, once the telomeres are burnt out, you're done. You're
right.
out.
So as you get older, your telomeres shrink, or they don't know whether as your telomeres shrink, you get older. Doesn't matter. As they shrink.
Created 33%. That's pretty.
And once your telomeres shrink to a point, then the cell won't replicate, right? So now, and that's where you see people hit a certain age, like in their 80s, and all of a sudden, the next time you see them, it looks like they've aged 10 years in a very short period of time, right? So your body's producing stem cells, and then once you as we get older, our stem cell production starts to tank, goes down, and then now you're not replicating cells. So, and it also has an apoptotic effect on senescent cells as well. So, which are, the deal with the whole aging process as well.
So it basically helps knock them out.
Yeah. So we see folks that come to us just for that, right? So
just for the anti-aging benefits.
The anti-aging, and they just feel better, right? So you're running on high octane. If your O2 sats go up 1,500%, and that's stored in your tissue, and in about 24 hours, they're back to normal. But now every cell in your body has enough O2 to create the sufficient amount of ATP for that cell to fire and function properly. So if you think about every cell has that, now every organ has every cell in there running on high octane, and so every organ's gonna run better. Hormonal exchange is better. There's just so many facets that it touches that there's many people with the means that have their own hyperbaric chamber or go to hyperbaric chambers continually. I've installed hyperbaric chambers in homes and
the hard shell?
Hard shell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, like I say, there's a lot of those stars and well-to-do people have them.
Yeah, if I can afford one, I'd put one in.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys I know people who have rented for cancer and other things, the soft-sided shells, or they just bought their own, because those are fairly affordable. I'd say, what, 17 to 20,000 range?
Yeah, and the soft, I mean, they do have their purpose. They don't do exactly the same thing, but You know, especially on the cancer side of it, you know, we can't say it's a treatment for cancer, but Otto Warburg, who got the Nobel Prize for his research on cancer, one of the main things he said is that if cells have enough oxygen, they won't turn cancerous. Whether that's completely true, I don't know, but we know the relationship between cancer and oxygen. It's there. And so as an adjunct therapy, as just a wellness thing, yeah, if you can get more oxygen into your tissue, you know, it can be helpful. Can you overdo it? No, I don't think, not on the soft-sided chambers, I don't think so. But there's still things, you know, as long as you do it safely, because there are safety concerns with situations like that, because if they're not operated properly, then you can get, say, carbon dioxide buildup in them. You know, there's just certain things that you have to be aware of, and you know, once you understand that and you keep that in mind with how you use them, then they're not a problem. They're safe.
I noted when I was really sick, and I got you got to go to a hyperbaric chamber, David. So I finally went. But you know, when you're sick, you don't think clearly.
No.
And my wife took me over, and she ran my blood, what my blood pressure was, and my oxygen, which was really low. And she says, you know, you barely qualify to get in this thing. I said, okay. So she put me in. She saw me special, so she brought me on a Saturday, but she normally not open on a Saturday in this particular place. And when I got out, first of all, yours is pretty cool. You lay on it and you slide them in. Very nice.
In the single place chambers, yeah.
Yeah, those are nice. The one I use, you had to crawl it.
Right.
And I'm in there, and I'm so weak, I'm thinking like, how am I going to get out of here? She pulled on the pad and pulled me out, thankfully. I got done, I stood up and started talking. My wife and her went, oh my word, that's the guy we knew.
Right.
Made that big difference. And yeah, I remember going through, that was quite an interesting process. I think I did a series of 20 that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is it's so underestimated how important oxygen is to us, right? Hold your breath for just a minute. If you can hold it for 2, you're doing pretty good. I mean, it doesn't take much to really drive home how crucial oxygen is, right? Because you can go without food for a long time, water for 3 days maybe, oxygen, minutes, and things start shutting down, you know. And so for a lot of people, whether they have, say, mitochondrial dysfunction or some other process that they're not getting enough O2, this is huge, and we can really, you know, we're not supposed to use it as a diagnostic tool, but a lot of times it gives you a good understanding of, you know, what might be going on when people go in there and respond to it very quickly. But yeah, I had a patient with dementia that he shuffled in. I talked to him. He's just, you know, the lights on, but no one's home, right? So asking him questions, and he's just looking at me slack-jawed, but just with a gaze, right? And so we put him in the chamber. He comes out, and we're having just normal conversation, right? And it was just amazing to see that. And so I asked his daughter, who brought him there, what, you know, does he respond when he exercises, when he gets up and moves around? She goes, oh yeah, he does well, a lot better when he gets some exercise. And I said, well, you know, that sounds like maybe, you know, he's got a lack of blood flow to his brain. And she said, well, his doctor said that he has vascular necrosis. I'm like, there you go. There's a big part of your dementia there. He also had Lewy body dementia, but that was transient, so it kind of come and go. But he had, after that, you know, we did a course of treatments on him, and he would go for long walks with his kids, dribbling a soccer ball, carrying on a conversation.
Wow.
And yeah, so it just was, yeah, night and day, life-changing.
Did that keep up then for quite some time? Or?
Yeah. I mean, he eventually passed away, but he had actually like 3 really good years of life with his family, being able to, to communicate, and his quality of life was just night and day. Where
Well,
it was.
that's a big piece of, especially for the caregivers.
Yeah, and that's the thing is
That'll kill you.
right.
That'll kill the caregiver.
Right.
Taking care of someone with dementia, Alzheimer's will kill the caregiver.
the patient, right?
Yes.
So you have to take all of that into consideration, and even though insurance doesn't pay for it, it
How many
really.
treatments did he do?
We did 40.
40 treatments, $8,000.
Yeah.
And when you look at what it costs to put someone in an Alzheimer's unit today, you can spend as much as 16 grand.
Well, not only that, but then look at their quality of life.
Oh, yeah. I've got a family member in assisted living. I first put them in memory care, and I learned she shouldn't have been there. But this is what I came away from, because I started going and checking these out. They were serving them little cans of diet sodas for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Can we talk about speeding up the dementia process? There were people there that were sitting on the couch all day long, not moving, head tilted, just kind of asleep, existing. No one's giving them water. Right. They're not moving. No. We did a whole series on this, series 200 through 210, if you guys are listening to the podcast, about recovering Alzheimer's dementia. It was just, and then I went around in the food choices, and what I've learned that the keto diet's better, that most people are, well, they're serving cheap carbs. Right.
Yeah, I mean.
They're calling it type 3 diabetes, which makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
We're learning.
So 40 treatments. Yeah. Quality of life was better.
Yeah, and.
You play soccer and talk at the same time.
Yeah, it was
He couldn't do that before.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, my dream, I guess, one day I would like to see every community have big hyperbaric chambers, because if you do this on a scale, a large scale, you can drop that price down where you pay $25 for a treatment and go in and get a treatment. You can do it every day if you need it. But the quality of life, the diseases that you could avoid.
Well, look at our Medicare and Medicaid costs. Right. They're through the roof. Right. And we could probably cut that by 75% just doing basic things like colon hydrotherapy, hyperbaric treatments, getting some good quality vitamins and minerals. Yeah. Get the glyphosate and the atrazine out of the food chain. I mean, these basic things would. And get rid of the 5G cell towers and get those from radiating people and the Wi-Fi.
We're learning, but we're learning.
We're learning too slow.
Very slow.
Well, look how slow we learn. Yeah. In 1964, the Surgeon General placed on the cigarette carton, "This is dangerous." Right. It took another 40 years before the state of Idaho said, maybe we won't allow you to smoke in public places or in government offices and so forth. Yeah. And we can't wait 40 years for these cell towers. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's all money based.
It's all money based. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
There's a lot of evil out there, but you know what? It's cool. I mean, thanks to social media, I believe, good and bad, that this people are learning very quickly how we can change our lifestyle.
If it weren't for that, we'd still be right back where we were, and and that's the thing, is getting that information out there to folks that that couldn't get it any other way, or couldn't get another view of it, right? So
how do people go about getting a hold of let's say a veteran's listening to this today, and they don't have the money, the resources. How do they go about getting a hold of your foundation?
I mean, they can call us here. They can go online and look up Hyperbaric Health and Wellness Foundation. If they're an Idaho vet, the Albertsons Foundation, the Mission 43, pays for Idaho veterans. They've got a beautiful facility. I think it's a $55 million facility in Boise that they can house them there. They've got a beautiful facility. They've got hyperbarics there. They've got therapists there.
I didn't know about this.
Fully funded for Idaho veterans. Now, not all Idaho veterans. For their program, it's recent vets.
Okay.
Right. So
it's boomers.
Yeah.
The boomer vets that are left there.
But to me, I don't make that distinction. If you're a veteran, I don't care whether you're a Korean War veteran or there are not many World War II vets out there still, but or Vietnam vet. Yeah. If we can help them, we'll do it. There's some things we're limited on our funding, so we have to look at where we're going to make the most impact. Right. So we do that, but there are programs out there for these guys, and most of the special operations guys, there are foundations out there that will pay for their treatments, and so they not only get the treatment paid for, but like their flights are paid for. There's a group called Luke's Wings. There's Airlift Command that will fly patients out to get medical treatments and take care of that. But it's someday the VA is going to come on. Now there's actually several states. I think North Carolina is the recent one that the state will pay for veterans hyperbaric treatments.
Wow. Well, it makes a lot of sense from, you just look at this, the state of Idaho. I follow politics there, and they're going through their budgets, and, they're only there 3 months to prove these budgets. Right. But, on one hand this year, you had the lobbyists and certain people fighting to keep the SNAP program paying for Coca-Cola and diet sodas. Right. And that finally got passed, that's not being paid for now. However, like I told them, I says, you've got another expense. There's a huge expense that's being created by what you're funding here. Right. You're creating your own expense. Right. By paying for sodas and junk food. Yeah. And you're raising your costs. Right. It's like you're cutting off your leg. Yeah. And you wonder why you can't walk.
Yeah. The pharmaceutical and the medical industry has such a chokehold over what's approved and what's not approved in it,
the billions that Pepsi and Coke make are just insane.
The sad part is once I got into the medical world, the deeper I got into it, the uglier it got, and you see that it's not necessarily about patient care, it's about bottom line. And now, that's not to say.
How dare you say that? I'm not going to be able to put this on YouTube now.
But there are really good doctors out there. There are. And there's folks out there trying to come up with cures and medicines and that. And I applaud them. And they're doing a great job with it. It's just that underlying side when medicine starts to become more commercialized, then we run into those kind of problems where it can be abused. Hopefully, we're going to get that under control, but it's going to take a while.
Right. Have we covered everything?
I think we've covered this. I'll probably think of something later on.
So, how do people get a hold of you?
We're Hyperbarics of Sun Valley. We're in Hailey, Idaho. And so they can call us here.
What's your phone number?
It is 208-928-6267.
All right, so they can look you up online, and the website address is?
Probably www.hyperbaricsofsunvalley.com.
Okay, we'll put that in all the show notes.
And they can just punch in Hyperbarics of Sun Valley. It used to be when you punched in Hyperbarics in Idaho, we were like the first ones. But since then, it's Hyperbarics has gotten more popular. Yeah. But unfortunately, there's not that many hyperbaric facilities around. Like I say, it's
kind of like cold hydrotherapy. There's not many of those either. And I think the two are just a match made in heaven for.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah.
Give you the toxins and give you the oxygen, clean up that old junk in the
Yeah, and that's it. Being able to figure out what adjunct therapies, are will work for what you're trying to achieve.
Now, who can't get in a chamber? Like yesterday I called.
Right.
I said, Phil, I don't feel well.
Right.
I need to come down.
So yeah, if your sinuses are all jacked up and you can't clear,
Yeah.
then there's a chance that that either your sinuses are going to get plugged
Can't
up
clear your
or your ears,
Yeah.
right? So so that can be an issue. Some people have problems clearing, but there's things that we can do to get them to clear better. And we go very slow. We go at whatever the patient can do. So if the patient has problems clearing, they can't clear, then we stop immediately. The patient lets us know, and we'll stop there.
How long are you in the chamber?
You're in the chamber for about an hour and a half.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah. So it's not that long, about the length of a movie. So in the single place chamber, you can't take anything in the chamber with you. You'll pick out a movie and that, because in there, the oxygen can be an issue.
Right.
The flammability, not that oxygen's flammable, but it supports combustion. And so high concentrations of O2, you don't want an electronic device.
Whereas the one I used with the mask.
And they're pressurizing that with air.
So the only oxygen, so they're processing with air. So I could take my cell phone in, I could take my books in.
Right, yeah.
They would say not take any metal in, but what was interesting, I could take my cell phone in.
Right, it's interesting, some of the rules in hyperbaric medicine, they came from the Navy. Most all of those rules came from the Navy. And what I learned in Navy dive school, the whole no metal in the chamber was due to the med techs, the diving med techs, because as a diver in the military, you're issued a dive knife, right? And so you're supposed to keep that knife with you at all times. If you've got to cut someone loose, you want to have that, and you don't want to have to go looking for it. Well, the diving med techs didn't want the divers, these crazy divers, in the chamber with knives. Well, you can't just say, we don't trust you, but you can say, well, that knife might drop and create a spark, which could, possibly turn into a fire in the chamber. So they said, no metal, even though our dive trunks had a metal buckle on it, we said, well, what about that? Well, we're not going to talk about that. And non-ferrous metals are not going to create a spark like that. They can conduct electricity, but someone's earrings or your ring on your finger is not going to create a spark. It's just not. But because they adopted those rules over, and nobody asked the hard questions, like, why are we doing this? And when I went to my course to become a hyperbaric technician, they taught the same thing. But I asked, why, but I knew the answer because we were taught that at dive school.
Now, recently in Boise, there was a big issue. Fire departments came out and closed down some natural paths that had soft-sided.
Right.
What's the story there?
So the fear was that, one, they were a fire hazard, right? So anytime you enrich the environment with oxygen, and I've been a firefighter for 30 years, and so you understand the fire triangle, right? So if you have to have oxygen, fuel, and an ignition source. If you eliminate one of those from that fire triangle, you're not going to have a fire. Well, if you enrich oxygen and you've got a fuel source, if you have any kind of ignition source, then you could potentially have a fire. And they have had incidences in hyperbaric chambers where you've had a fire. Not that I know of in soft chambers, but but that was the issue is, well, this could potentially become a problem. And also, they're actually in the wellness realm. So I'm not quite sure why they got shut down because, you could just say, well, we're in the wellness, we're not in the medical side, right? We're not under FDA. And so that was the big thing, that you were having people that weren't trained to run the hyperbaric those chambers, and they weren't considered medical devices. They weren't billed as medical devices, though, and so they got the fire marshals and that involved in that, saying, well, these businesses have oxygen, even though they were oxygen concentrators in there, and then they're putting people in these devices that aren't PVHO, they're not pressure vessel for human occupancy. And so they said, well, that's a concern, and so you should, check these facilities out, and if they have this, you should shut them down. I personally, if I had one of those facilities, I'd push back on that, because I think it's an overreach on their. One, they're in the wellness realm. Two, they're not using medical grade oxygen. They're not, and they're not billing it as a medical treatment. It's a wellness treatment. So I think they just didn't push back hard enough, and that's that some of them just closed because they didn't shut them down, but they closed because they didn't want to deal with the fire marshals and that. Yeah. I believe that was the situation. I don't know exactly, 'cause I don't know any of those facilities there, but I remembered that when that happened. But part of that, I think, came from the possibly the UHMS and or some other organizations out there that deal with hospital-based hyperbarics, right? Because they don't want these soft chambers out there. Some people think that they're safe, and some people think that they don't work. Now, they don't do the same thing. So to have a soft chamber and bill it as that it ramps up stem cell production and knocks down inflammation, and there's no studies that a soft chamber does that. So they kind of ride on the coattails of that. Doesn't mean that they don't work.
So basically, what a soft side is good for is just getting more oxygen into your body,
tissue.
into your
Right.
tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to wound care and some of these other, like your back
Right.
issue,
Right.
you're going to need something like
Right.
your
Right.
system.
Right. But some people are finding that
Can you do the same? So the one I use, hard shell, with the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Can that help my back, or do I need to be in your type of chamber?
Right. So you're trying to have that apoptotic effect, apoptotic effect of inflammatory cells. You're trying to make that gene response happen.
Right.
And at those low pressures, with that low O2 sats, you're not getting that. It doesn't trigger those gene responses. But yeah, they do. Soft-sided chambers, mild hyperbarics, has its place. But you have to just look at what it actually does and what it doesn't do, and not, so you're not paying for something that's not going to happen. Right. And that's a big concern with hyperbaric facilities like mine, is that, if somebody with a soft chamber set up next door and said, we do the same thing and we do it at a fraction of the cost, and you don't have to get a prescription for it, well, that's not true, because it doesn't do the same thing.
Right. So the one I use, where I'm in a hard chamber with the mask, I would muscle test to see, just because I can. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that normally. I think they went down to 2.3 or 4 atmospheres.
No, it wouldn't go to 2. It would go 1.3 or 1.4. Oh, the hard shell. Yeah. Probably 2.4, 2.5. The most hard chambers are rated to 3 atmospheres.
And you can still get that with just doing the mask?
Oh yeah, that doesn't change the pressure.
Okay.
Right? That has nothing to do with the pressure. That's just your delivery system for your O2.
Okay.
So the pressure will determine how much dissolves into your tissue, right? It just think of it as crushing that bubble smaller, right? So you're taking clusters of oxygen molecules, and the deeper you go, the tighter they get crushed, right? So if you took a balloon and you went down 1 atmosphere
Right.
Of pressure, it will be half the size.
Okay.
Then you go down another atmosphere, it's going to be half the size of that, right? So the gases in there are getting condensed, right? So if you think of it as that bubble being, say, or that balloon being a little bubble, right? A gas bubble in your blood, in your plasma, it's going to get smaller and smaller. Now it can get into places that it normally couldn't.
So in your system where I don't wear a mask, the oxygen's just in there all around me.
No, that you're pressurizing that with air. Or you're saying when you're wearing a mask or not?
No, in your system.
In my system, if I don't have them with a mask in the single place chamber and O2's all around you, then you're breathing it in.
Right.
And you're getting some transdermally.
Okay.
But mostly it's the effect is what's going into your lungs. So that oxygen goes into your lungs, passes the capillary wall, the wall in your in the alveola, right, and moves over into the bloodstream, right. Once it goes in through the bloodstream, then it runs out to those small capillaries. Once it passes out of the capillaries into the tissue, then through diffusion, it bumps along through the rest of your tissue, whether it's interstitial fluids or interstitial tissue, and once it gets to, say, bone, it will dissolve into the bone tissue. It takes longer for it to get into your bones, but it will dissolve into there. And then now you've got, eventually your whole tissue, your body's going to saturate and equalize at that 1,500% higher than normal. So if you have, say, a deep bone infection, osteomyelitis in that bone there, and you're trying to get oxygen there to kill that bacteria, it will eventually do that. And that's why osteomyelitis is one of the things that insurance will pay for. It's interesting that the whole saturation thing, and they're using it, they're experimenting, and some countries are using it more readily, is in radiation therapy, right? So when you do radiation therapy, radiation keys in on the O2 molecule, superheats the O2 molecule, and destroys the tissue around there, or destroys whatever tissue it's in. So what they're doing is they'll take a patient that has, say, a tumor, they'll put them in a hyperbaric chamber, saturate the patient, saturate the tumor, right? It's holistically, I mean, you saturate the whole system, and then take the patient out of the chamber, let the patient sit for a while, and their body's going to off-gas. Because dense tissue like that, especially tumors, aren't very vascular, it doesn't off-gas as fast as the tissue around it. So this tumor is super saturated, and the tissue around it is not very saturated with O2 because it's off-gassing much higher. This has more O2 than the tissue around it. So when they hit it with radiation, they get a better take on a better kill on the tumor because it's got more O2 in it than the tissue around it. So you have less collateral damage, and it's more effective on the tumor. So hopefully in the U.S. they'll start using it more because you can lower the dosage and have a better effect for it. And it potentiates chemo as well. So you could do the same thing with chemo with cancer patients, is that and they're finding that they can reduce the dose of chemo to where they're not losing their hair and they don't get as sick, and it's just as effective or sometimes more effective. And we have to be careful with, say, a patient that's on chemo, because it potentiates chemo. So you don't want it, you don't want to make them feel sicker when you put them in the chamber.
How do you decide between your single chamber and the people that
Go in the multi?
The multi and sit there, yeah.
It's the patient's comfort.
Okay.
Right? So, and sometimes, I mean, if I can put more people in the big chamber, then obviously it's cheaper because I'm treating, say, 4 patients at a time in there versus 1 in the single place chamber. So for some, there's a price break on that. But then sometimes if a patient's claustrophobic in the small chamber, then we'll put them in the big chamber. If they're claustrophobic in the big chamber, then we'll put them in the smaller chamber. The smaller chamber, the single place chamber, it's still big. One's 36 inches, the other one's 40 inches. So they're large acrylic chambers, so they're see-through. So even someone that feels like they may be claustrophobic, when we put them in there, most of the time it's not claustrophobic to them because they can see out, they can see.
Yeah, the first time I did mine was on the soft side of it. It was just you had little slits. And then the big hard shell was porous as well, but it was just so big.
Right.
Yeah. It could sit up well.
Yeah, so for most people, it's not an issue, but it's for some people, they can feel claustrophobic in the big chamber. I had a vet that didn't want to go in the big chamber because it made him feel like he was in his APC that hit an IED. Oh. So, but the single place chamber he felt fine in. So it's patient comfort for the most part.
I think I ran out of questions.
Yeah, that was a lot of.
If you didn't learn everything about hyperbaric chambers, then you were not paying attention. Well, thanks for being on the cast.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Until next week, my friends, you have a blessed week. I'm David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center, where miracles begin by healing from within. And my great guest, Phil Rainey of Hyperbarics of Sun Valley in Hailey, Idaho. Until next week, take care.
Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid sized patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there, and go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net, or call the office at 208-3789-911. Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, than by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Waters.
My name's Peg. I came to Living Waters about a year ago, so I run pretty hard when I'm working. But through this retreat, I think one of the biggest things that I've gained is that self-confidence. Thank you, Living Waters.
Hi, my name is Anna Lewis, and I came to do the 10-day cleanse because I hadn't been feeling really well, and so I could cleanse, get rid of parasites and toxins in my body, and those were great help. So thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out this hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. That's 208-3789-911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing is right for you.